You are listening to that famous band, the Potholes. That's right, they're doing their impersonation of Estonian chamber music. Estonian chamber music. Now, why are we starting the program with Estonian chamber music, you might ask? Well, first of all, GMAE, good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Thanks for listening to us on all of our platforms for the podcast. Make sure that you, that's right, like and subscribe. Oh, we love it when you do that. Holy cow, we are so appreciative. I am pounding my heart because I'm so appreciative of you all doing that. Anyway, Estonian chamber music, the reason we're starting with that is because a very good friend of mine who lives in the same subdivision I do here in Daytona Beach, he and I go out for coffee and donuts almost every Friday. And for some reason, a few weeks ago, he decided to introduce me to Estonian chamber music. Now, he and his wife are in Estonia. Now, honestly, I'm not that good in geography. Estonia could be a state that I never heard of, but he says it's way, way over, like, there. Someplace. It's there. So anyway, he was there, and he went to a church, and he heard this Estonian chamber music played by Estonian chamber music people, and bought some of their CDs and decided to play one for me. Okay, well, yeah, it was really something. And so, as you all know, or hope you know, those of you that listened to episode 4 was the music episode where I had taken your suggestions on music that I should listen to and maybe download it to my phone, had actually listened to it, and yes, had actually downloaded some into my phone, which was pretty cool. Anyway, he was highly upset that I did not include some Estonian chamber music in my downloads. Well, yeah. I'm more of a Rolling Stones, Bruce Springsteen, Rod Stewart, Bob Seger, AC/DC kind of guy. Estonian chamber music was not there for me. Is that a nice way of putting it? Not there. It wasn't in that area where it needed to be in for me to actually enjoy it. So, this is for my friend Joe. This is the opening to Potholes and Cadillac Dreams, episode number 5. And a shout out for Estonian chamber music. If you're interested, boys and girls, feel free to pick up your phones or go to your computers, get on the Google machine, and Google Estonian music, Estonian, yeah, chamber music, that stuff. Yeah, I forget. What's really interesting now, if you really think about it, I mean, he was very specific. He did not play me anything like French chamber music, German chamber music, Austrian chamber music, African chamber music, Lithuanian chamber music, Australian chamber music, even Canadian or Mexican chamber music. No, it was Estonian chamber music. That's what he likes. Good for him. Thank goodness he's got other redeeming qualities, because holy mackerel, if I had to listen to that stuff too much longer, it wouldn't be good. Anyway, GMAE, thank you for tuning in to episode number 5, where we're going to cover what I have called the basics. And I bring my notes over to me so that I can quickly look down. For those of you watching on YouTube, for those of you, again, listening to me on the podcast, I don't have notes. I'm right off the top of my head. Have no notes. I am brilliant. I can do this in my sleep. And unfortunately, my wife says that I have been. I've really got to stop doing that. Anyway, the basics. The first one is, the first basic that we're going to talk about is the family. There have been many, many potholes in my family. We are a very small family. We have the mother, the father, and my sister. My sister and I, unfortunately, have not spoken in 7 years. We're in the same family, but we're 2 entirely different people. I don't know if any of you all have encountered that, but in my case, it's absolutely true. I will give you a concrete example. If someone said to me, White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia. I would conjure up the Greenbrier. A lot of you have heard about the Greenbrier. There's a PGA tournament played there. They have 3 beautiful golf courses. It is a resort. It is a resort among resorts. It is absolutely beautiful. I have been there many times, been fortunate enough to have been there many times. The last time was in 2006 for the Golf Channel Amateur tournament. It was a hoot and a holler, and it was much fun, and the Greenbrier is a gorgeous place, and I have told my beloved that I wish I could take her there one day, and hopefully I will. My sister would have thought of campsites, would have thought of places to hike, she wouldn't have thought of the Greenbrier, except maybe she would remember that when she was a child, she learned how to ride horses there. That may be the only thing that would be alike. But otherwise, it would be campgrounds, campsites, RV places, that type of thing. She lives in rural, I would say rural Virginia. It's outside of D.C. She's about an hour and a half outside of D.C. Has a beautiful little house. But she and I are entirely different. Completely, totally different. We had some challenges in regards to my father's estate. She handled everything there absolutely brilliantly. She should have been an attorney. Unfortunately, she had a challenge with dyslexia, and I think she still does. I don't know if she does or not. I haven't spoken to her, as I said, in 7 years. But she handled it absolutely beautifully. I have missed her. I do love her, but she and I haven't talked. And I don't think we ever will, because we're 2 entirely different people. Had we not been in the same family, we probably never would have crossed paths. I'm sure there are those of you out there that have the same type of deal. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. My mother was married to my father for 29 years. She filed for divorce because he was a serial prolific cheater. He cheated on her constantly. He cheated on her often. He cheated on her all over the state, probably all over the country. He was, that's what he was. He wasn't the best role model in terms of a marriage, in terms of the truth, in terms of money. And this is kind of surprising because I've mentioned before that I was a country club kid. I was raised with a silver spoon, platinum spoon, gold spoon, and wanted for nothing. And it wasn't until I got to Arizona and failed miserably at a business that I was trying that I ended up looking for change for food. And the reason I believe it is because at an early age I basically was made to feel that life owed me everything. That I didn't know I need to go out and do what I needed to do because my father showered me with stuff. The reason he showered me with stuff is because he wanted me, for lack of a better term, on his side in any challenges with my mother. We were basically a family extremely divided. My sister and my mother were very close. My father and I were very close. But my closeness was that I knew where my bread was buttered, if you understand the meaning of that. And so that's the way I was brought up. Silver spoon, wanted for nothing, got everything. When I say I went to the Greenbrier, I mean, he and I went there many, many times. He would go there with other women other than my mother, and I would go there with him, and I would just accept that because that was the way I was brought up. The only reference that I can give you about this would be the Kennedys. It seems like the patriarch, Joe Kennedy, was a serial cheater, for lack of a better term, and he basically taught his sons the same type of deal, and that's the way they were most of their adult lives. So it's not a good way to bring up anybody. In terms of money, as I said before, I never really had a good work ethic because I don't think I was ever taught one. Now, my dad, I will tell you, was in his office every morning at 5 o'clock, was was a very successful trial attorney, was one of the last of the general practitioners. But what he taught me was, I'll make the money and you spend it. And that's the way it was. So that was my family. So you make your own potholes when you're in a family. I mean, I should have known right from wrong, and I didn't, because I thought I was going to just get handed everything my entire life, and unfortunately I wasn't. So that was something that I needed to overcome, and it took me quite a while to overcome it. I did climb out of that pothole. I can tell you as an aside that when my mother and father divorced, my father fully expected me to testify against my mother in a court of law, and I did. And that is something that I live with every single day. To see my mother crying at the one table with her attorney, looking at me and just crying, not, tears pouring down her face, as I'm basically lying on the witness stands. I basically committed perjury because my bread was buttered over on the other table, and I wanted to make sure that bread stayed buttered. And it is something that I deeply regret, and I apologize to her a million times, and I would, if I could, apologize to her a million more. But she died in 2005. My father died in 2017. So there's no chance of me, but I think she knows that it is among all my relationship with my mother, that is the absolute one thing that I most deeply regret. And that is a pothole, unfortunately, that I can't fix. I just need to make sure that when I am in relationships, good relationships with either my wife or my friends or whomever, that I don't do something as unbelievably hideous as that. And I think telling you about it kind of reinforces that. The lesson learned would be, if you really are learning lessons, is don't take sides. Don't take sides. They're your mother and your father, and don't take sides. As you know, I'm adopted too. And you would think with all that craziness, I would have wanted to meet my adopted parents, but no. Never wanted to do that either. So there's family. Such as it is, we're going to cover family lots and lots of times more, but that's just to give you a general overview of that particular pothole. The next one is friends and friendship. I think I'm a good friend to the people that I am friendly with. I'm a pretty loyal guy. You got to do a lot of stuff to piss me off. But when I was doing notes for this particular videocast podcast, I thought about a guy who I hadn't thought about in a little bit. And again, it's one of those potholes that you really can't fix. You really can't smooth over. It's one of those potholes that maybe you learn from and you don't make the same mistake again. If that mistake ever comes, or that challenge ever comes into being again, you try to do the right thing rather than the wrong thing. High school was a terrible time for me. And the only way I got through the first 2 years of high school was because of a guy by the name of Mark Pierce. And Mark Pierce was really my only friend for the first 2 years of high school. I am by nature an introvert, and we're going to cover that in episode 6. But he and I got along spectacularly. As a matter of fact, the only picture that's in the yearbook for my sophomore year of high school is he and I standing in line in the cafeteria. And that's basically the way it was. Everywhere I would go, he would go. Everywhere he would go, I would go. We were inseparable. What happened in the junior year of high school was that I think Mark and other people realized how incredibly talented he was. He was a great actor. I saw him in Man of La Mancha when the Bishop Ireton High School, which is where I went, had put on Man of La Mancha. He played Sancho Panza, and he was brilliant. I mean, I would say that now at age 67, having seen hundreds of thousands of actors, actresses, he was brilliant. He could sing. very, very well. He played the piano very, very well. And so he drifted toward the theater crowd, and I drifted toward, I don't know, the English major crowd. Maybe it would be the right way to put it. The folks I hung out with in junior, senior year, they were more English major related guys, but still nerdy. I mean, we were all nerds. We certainly weren't the hip group by any stretch of the imagination. So I hung out with a different group, but I always felt badly about Mark and I just kind of splitting ways. So, you know, what old people do. Old people tend to get on Facebook and try to connect with each other and try to find out where the other person is. So one day I got this friend request from Mark Pierce, and he was living in Massachusetts and he was married. And I was kind of surprised to hear from him because I had received it wasn't really a yearbook. It was kind of like a Where Are They Now kind of book, kind of a chronological thing, not chronological, but a yearly type of year by year where people were, how to get a hold of them, how to get in touch. And in it, they said Mark Pierce was dead. So I thought, oh, well, I'd never hear from him again. And then I heard from him, and I said to him over Facebook, typing, Mark, I thought you were dead. And he said that his first wife had told Bishop Arton High School that he was deceased, so that they wouldn't contact him anymore. And he's the one that actually contacted Bishop Arton and said, no, I am very much alive. Thank you very much. And so he got into this. So we stayed in touch through Facebook. Just before, that was about a year or so before I left Bar Harbor to come down here. Year two, something like that. I heard from Mark, and he wanted to talk to me. Wanted to talk to me on the phone. Now, he caught me, and it wasn't his fault. He caught me at a very bad time where I was having some challenges in Bar Harbor. And for some reason, the name Mark Pierce conjured up all the bad things that happened in high school, and they were plentiful. If you feel in your heart that high school were the best years of your life, I am one that feels that high school is the worst time in my life. The worst 4 years of my life were high school. No doubt about it. Bishop Arton High School has asked me for money. I'll never give them a dime. I couldn't care less about Bishop Arton if it sunk into the ground. It wouldn't bother me. That's a terrible thing to say. That's honestly the way I feel. They were 4 terrible years. So anyway, he called me at the time and he wanted to chat, and I was like, I actually wrote him back and said that I really didn't want to open up this chapter in my life anymore, and just don't call. And I was in a bad place. I wish I could tell you why I was in a bad place, but I was. So he didn't. And a little while later, I thought, it would be nice to get back, and I felt kind of bad about what I had done. And so I tried to contact him, and I got back on Facebook, and I saw a bunch of tributes, and he had passed away from cancer. So I was stunned, and I cried, admittedly, and I didn't know. It's hard to explain to you how I felt. I was so ashamed of myself because he was obviously reaching out to me for a reason. I had been his closest friend for 2 years. I mean, that means something, I guess. And I felt horrible. It gutted me. It absolutely gutted me is the only way I can describe it to you. And so it's a pothole that I will never get out of, because I'll always have that regret of not just simply picking up the damn phone and calling him and saying, hey, buddy, how are you? Not knowing that maybe I was one of the last few people he wanted to talk to, not knowing, what the circumstances were other than he's no longer here for me to right my wrong. So I think the reason I bring him up is maybe to, as my friend Greg wanted me to do lessons learned. And lesson learned there is, don't take any friend for granted. Friends are rare in this life. I mean good friends. I mean solid friends. Friends you can count on. Friends that you would take a bullet for. Friends that you would stand in front of a truck for. And there was a time in my life when I would have done that for Mark. And without any question. Because he was it for me. He was the only person in that school that mattered to me at all. I would have taken a bullet for the guy. And then I let him down. I can't think of any other way to feel other than I let him down. So lesson learned, boys and girls, friends, is don't take any of your friends for granted. Even today, if you get this message and you feel so inclined, pick up a phone. Don't text, don't email, don't Facebook, don't whatever. Don't Twitter. Call them up. See how they're doing. Say hi. Because you never know. You may look one day and find out your friend is no longer there and you didn't do what you should have done when you thought about it. Okay? Friendship. That's number 2. Number 3 is work. We have covered that a little bit. I didn't really get a sense of what work, and by work I mean earning money for a living, doing the things you're supposed to do to put food on the table for your family or to put a roof over your family's head or any of that until I would say later in life when I was close to 40, if you can believe that. I have a history let me put that very clearly. I had a history of not giving it my full all. I would think the only time I really did that was in a job that I will still say is the greatest job I ever had in my life, and that was regional manager for Frontier Fruit and Nut. I gave that my all because every day was a challenge. Every day was an adventure. We even if it was firing a whole team at a store because we couldn't find out who or where or why someone had stolen. They were stealing from us and we didn't know how they were doing it. And I had a full accounting department behind me. My owner was the son of a very, very wealthy man who basically, gave him some accounting folks to use and they couldn't find the challenge. So there was one time when I had to go to a store and just fire everybody. And, that you wouldn't think at that point that that's the greatest job you've ever had in the entire world, because for 3 weeks I had to live in that area and I had to hire and, do the things that you do. But I look back on all that. It was 1981 to 1984. I look back on that as 4 of the greatest years of my life. I just loved that job and I gave it my all the time. Other than that, honestly, I don't really think I gave any position that I had 100% of my ability until Arizona. And the moment that I was unsuccessful in a business that I tried, which we will cover in a later podcast, and found myself searching for change and thinking that was going to be it for me. Being close to being evicted, being close to not having any money for food or whatever, you get to that point, and then all of a sudden the silver spoon drops from your mouth, and you're going, okay, now I get it. You gotta go out there, and you gotta, yes. And luckily, I found another position, and luckily I was able to move forward, and luckily things turned out okay. I did move back to Virginia, January of 1993, but for the time that I failed miserably in that one venture until 1993, which is about a year and a half, close to a year and a half, 2 years, I did okay. So that was an eye-opener for me. And of course, lesson learned is give it your all, no matter what you do. I think we've covered that earlier, but that's one of the basics. We've covered family, friends. We've talked about work just briefly. We're going to talk about work a lot because, I've had so many positions, and we'll cover why in a later podcast as well. But it wasn't really until Arizona, which is from 1980. If you're keeping track, if you have your scorecard at home, everybody, this would be 1986 to 1993, January of 1993. So April of 86 to January of 93 was when I was in Arizona. They were fun years, but they were also very difficult years, and they were years that I finally developed a sense of a work ethic that I have more or less carried the rest of my life. So we've covered family, we've covered friends, we've covered work, we're about to cover play, and we're only going to cover play for a few minutes, and then we have to shut this down because I only like to do this for about 30 minutes, so keep everything concise. I love to play golf. I'm not good at it. I learned to play golf when I was like 8 or 9 years old. And I've been a stopper and a starter and a stopper and a starter. And I never liked to practice. That's another thing there. You can write that down. Didn't like to practice. What a surprise that is. If you don't like to work hard, the chances are you don't like to play hard either. So I never liked to practice. I did, however, play tennis. I was pretty good at tennis. I got to, I would say, about a B plus level, close to a B plus level. And I don't really know why I stopped playing tennis other than I think I got to a plateau and couldn't go past it. I remember playing, and I'm admittedly probably an A- player. This was back home in Alexandria, Virginia, played this guy. And all of a sudden I realized just how not good. I was good, but not that good. This guy was about an A- player, and I don't think I ever saw a serve. I think he just went, this guy could serve like crazy. And no matter how far back, I would have had to knock the fence down and go back another 10 feet to be able to handle this guy's serve. He did everything. I would serve it, and he just wham. I mean, and he maybe hit, if you got to do a set, it's 4 points a game. So that would be 4 points a game. A 6-0 would be 24. Maybe he hit 26 shots, 27, 28 shots. Didn't hit many because he aced me almost every single time. I would serve it to him. He would put one by me almost every single time. He had bullets. Bullet backhand, bullet forehand. And that's when I turned back to golf, and I took up a thing called natural golf, which is a single plane. If you look it up, again, the Google machine, everybody, single plane swing, where it's basically, if I can put my hand up here, it's like up, forward. Let me move this way, up, forward, up, forward. You're not really turning as you do if you look at a PGA tournament. Those guys are like turning. I mean, they're doing full back turns, and then you hear about people like Freddie Couples and Tiger Woods who have bad backs. The reason they do is because they have that turn, and they're extending their backs, and then it just messes with your back. So the single plane is you're not really moving that much. It's a lot of leg, but it's not that much back. It's just a tiny bit of a turn and more of a hip action where you're kind of moving your hip and your legs and kind of propelling the club that way. So I tried that, and I got my handicap down to like a respectable. It was about 20. I mean, I was going down. I mean, it would have been a lot better. And then I literally have, except for 3 weeks ago, my friend Greg, he of the Lessons Learned, he and his wife Mary came down to visit us in Daytona Beach, and I played golf with them for 2 days and did actually fairly well. But before that, I had not played for 2 years. One reason, of course, is my heart surgery, which we'll cover in another podcast. But I love to play. I love to play tennis. I love to play golf. I love to walk. I am a prolific walker. I can walk 6 to 7 miles at a time. I missed walking when I had my heart surgery, but the good thing about it was I was supposed to walk after my heart surgery to build up my stamina. So that was kind of a plus for me. So those are the things I like to do besides reading, as you can see behind me there. Though I got a whole bunch of books, and then I go to the library all the time. And we'll talk about my library and how much I love to read in episode 6, which we'll cover in just a minute. So we've done family, we've done friends, we've done work, we've done play, and we're not going to do love. That was the other basic We're not going to do that. We'll do that in a later podcast. I just want to be sure that I finish before too much longer because I like I said, I like to have it around the 30-minute mark for you all. Don't want you to, listen. I want you to make sure you listen to other podcasts and watch other videocasts and whatever. And we'll be splitting this one up like we haven't started. We started to be splitting up the videocast so that they're in little morsels so that you can look at a particular topic. So anyway, we finish up with, again, my two requests. First is Demi Bennett, Demibennet, and I'm going to give you a little hint. This is a little hint for you that are watching my videocast, and then I'm going to describe this hat that I'm putting on right now. There we go. It says NWO. New World Order is what it stood for. That is a hint for those of you playing at home. Demi Bennett, Bennett. Again, I do not want to talk about what Demi Bennett does per se or the character she plays per se. I would like to talk to her about her journey and about what she's gone through to get to where she is today. Because at age 26, I think she's 26. I think I read she's 26. Then it's a remarkable story. And I think it gets pushed aside by the fact that she's so good at what she does. People don't really give her credit for the type of journey that she's undergone to get where she is today. And I'm speaking strictly as a 67-year-old man who's still working 40 hours a week. I am extremely impressed that somebody her age had that much fortitude and that much resolve and resoluteness to get the job done the way she has. So, Demi Bennett, Bennett. And again, Tracy Martin Salters, arguably the greatest pound-for-pound woman boxer in history. Would love to have her on as well. I hope the champ is looking at this and will finally decide to get in touch with me. We can talk about her book. We can talk about her Netflix documentary. We can talk about anything she wants to talk about. I heard she has a new job as well. We can talk about that. I would just love to get her on. So, I hope you all have a great, let's look up there. Hi. I have to, again, podcasters, I'm looking up at the camera, so don't say anything. Sorry. Hi. So anyway, thank you all very much for watching. Thank you all very much for listening. Again, I forgot to say it in the beginning because I'm still new to this thing. We've only done 5 episodes, but like and subscribe, that's right, here it comes, and subscribe. We appreciate it. We hope you have a great weekend. We hope you have a great next week. On episode number 6, we're going to talk about the fact that I'm introverted. Surprise, I am. We're going to talk about my reading. We're going to talk about my early employment positions that kind of set me up for where I am now, realistically. And we'll talk about some of the things as well. We will not talk about Estonian chamber music. We're not going to talk about Estonian chamber music. So keep that in mind. Again, thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you all have a great weekend. I hope you all have a great week. And we will see you very, very soon. Bye, everybody.